Councillor Dick.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to compliment Paul, the Chief Executive, and Mrs. Lambert and all the staff, and the Council for that matter, on a effective annual plan process where the focus has been on the big picture and strategy and dealing with the imperatives that face this region. I think everyone involved is to be complimented on the economies that have been achieved, with nearly $800,000 taken out of overhead costs, and in this last final trimming, $258,000 being reduced off the rate take. That's accomplishment that deserves credit for those who have been responsible for it. And just finally, the last thing I'd say is that if you want to sit around this table and focus not on policy, strategy and the big picture, but on micromanagement, then keep an eye on the employment opportunities that might be available on the staff.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't going to speak and waived it, but I think given the debate expanded a bit, I figured I might. I think it's very important, and it occurred in the meeting last night to a limited extent, to distinguish between what we're discussing about rates and what we're discussing about the other bits of the budget that are not funded by rates. The issue of the reductions or the economies was in the rate part of the budget, which is the smaller part. And that's where the emphasis was to find a number that was able to be sought from the ratepayer who is under pressure in the widest sense. And that's why we tried to get it down from 4.6 or whatever to 2.8, of which 0.6 of that is in fact that small dam, the macro dam. So it's actually sitting about 2.2, and within that the general rate is, I'm looking at Mr. Drew to help me, 0.7, give or take.
Oh, Councillor, I haven't seen the final numbers, but to get to 2.8 it'll be a minus. It'll be a minus.
Yeah, it's very small. And that, I think, is a really good outcome for the ratepayer. Now, the annual plan process includes the other bits, such as the Ratanifa and so on, or the funding that goes into those sorts of projects, which is funded from the investment side of the reserves and the other income sources. And that is not affected by those decisions about rates, and that's the distinction I'm trying to draw. And I think that's partly what the public don't understand, that this council is a very, very small ratepayer, or rate requirer, rate taker. In fact, remarkably so, compared to, say, the district councils, where the bulk of their incomes comes from rates and very little from other sources. However, so saying all of that, and it fits partly in what Councillor Gilbertson was saying as well, nonetheless the cars and the legal costs and all those other bits and pieces, which are then aggravated across the total sum of rates and other sources, does look large, and probably does have fat in it, and I don't say that unkindly. So that does justify at an earlier date than between the annual plan being submission process and now undoing the bits of the budget which have all been put together for the last 6 months. I think that the council, or the incoming council, has to look at those things and start much earlier with a finance committee or a process, or whatever it is. And I think we could probably come up with a less messy situation, which was precipitated by my accidentally almost requesting that we did have a look at it, and then the council kindly agreed. So I think we've ended up in a pretty good state nonetheless, with perhaps only one disagreement by the sounds of it at the end of the day, and I think we should take some pride on that and go forward accordingly.
I think everything's been said. We've had 2 against, 3 for. Will you wish to sum up?
I had a brief comment, Mr. Chairman.
Well, very briefly, but we're starting to go around in circles a bit.
Mr. Chairman, that I compliment also the staff and my fellow councillors for going through this exercise, and we've worked hard to strike a balance, and I think we've found it. The points that have been raised in successions of points raised by Councillor Ramswell have got nothing to do with what we've got in front of us. And if you vote against this...
Yeah, absolutely. Just make your point, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that a vote against this would be the very definition of cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Sum up, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I point out to all my fellow councillors, this process started in December last year. We've been through a very rigorous process to come up with a budget that was workable and that did not impact greatly on the ratepayers. By February this year, we were slashing around $1 million off that budget, which staff brought proposals to reduce overheads. That was a huge amount of cutting that has gone on in trimming. Quite frankly, it concerns me. Two areas that I'm very concerned about. The current cuts are in the reduction on the maintenance and improvements on our drainage and flood control. We only have to look around the world to see the disasters that are besetting us and to know that we should actually probably be pushing ahead with that earlier rather than later. And secondly, I am really concerned to cut 30,000 off our staffing budget for increase in salaries. This council is only as good as its staff. It's not the councillors make it at the end of the day, it's the quality of the staff we have. And we're very, very fortunate that we have a very high calibre of staff delivering very well. So I would have to comment also, as far as their vehicles go, that the staff time is more valuable than the vehicles. And any reduction in micromanagement of a fleet like that would actually lead to staff downtime is, to me, a much greater waste of money. I want to see our staff being able to utilise their time to the very best advantage and have the tools given to them. Such things have been raised, Mr Chairman, as cost of lawyers. We've got to realise we use lawyers for different purposes. We use lawyers who are specialists in resource management law. We use ones that are specialists in contract law. We use ones that are specialists in... No one lawyer in-house would provide anything like a service of what we are actually trying to access and doing in the most economic way. Webcasting as against big picture, the big picture goes into every household, Mr Chairman. Webcasting is accessed by only a limited number of people. The main thing is we're webcasting the council meetings. Nothing can be passed by council without going through that council meeting. So that's available. It gives us a year in which to actually see how well it's being used, how well it's being accessed, and how well that is. So there are lots of cuts there that we're unhappy with, but we made those cuts for the sake of the ratepayers. And I think it's quite important to note the point raised by Councillor Douglas that we're actually a very small rate taker. And as I made in the workshop, a 4% increase in our rates on an urban ratepayer made a $6 to $8 difference. But the City Council's rate increase of only 2.5% made up to about $150 increase. So rates, it is relative. We are a small rate taker because most of our funding does come from the investment portfolio.
Thank you. I'll put that motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you.